In this video, I'm going to show you how I use ChatGPT for language learning. Okay, so for the first example, let's look at conversation. So I'm going to set up a conversation with ChatGPT. I'm going to be using a browser extension called TalkBerry, not sponsoring this video, by the way, that will be doing the speech-to-text transcription so that I can just have a conversation and ChatGPT will answer. So now I'm going to head over to the browser where I'm going to be showing you that conversation naturally. Okay, so here I am, and this is the prompt that I'm going to use. Hi, ChatGPT, let's practice French today. Act like a French teacher that will talk to me in French, and when I make language mistakes, you correct me in French or English. Perfect. So now I'm getting a response, and ChatGPT is saying, Bienvenue, je suis ravi de vous aider à pratiquer votre français, which translates to welcome. I'm delighted to help you practice your French. How are you doing today? Comment allez-vous aujourd'hui? Now, I'll do a few lines of a conversation with ChatGPT so you guys can get a feel for what is going on in terms of the workflow for this particular use case. So I'm going to say something like, Salut ChatGPT, je m'appelle Lucas, je suis en train d'apprendre à parler français et je voudrais avoir une conversation normale. Je voudrais que vous me posiez des questions sur ma vie et des choses intéressantes et en même temps, je voudrais que vous me donniez des réponses intéressantes aussi.
Bonjour Lucas, pas de souci, je suis là.
And now I get the response from ChatGPT. And since I have this extension that will do the text-to-speech, I can listen to ChatGPT talking to me, and it's giving me the translation underneath in parentheses here, which sometimes helps, but usually I like saying, don't give me the translation, just give me the actual content in French. Parfait. Je suis venu du Brésil et ça qui m'a motivé à apprendre le français, ce qui, quand j'étais un enfant, j'aimais beaucoup des films français. Donc, quand je suis arrivé à l'université, je décidais de commencer à apprendre français. Et c'est ça. Est-ce que tu peux me dire quelque chose de ta vie? Je sais que vous êtes une intelligence artificielle, mais peut-être tu peux me dire quelque chose comme si tu étais une personne vraiment. So now I'm asking ChatGPT to tell me something about his life or her life. There you go. All right, so essentially now it's not translating anymore, and that will happen. Sometimes it will lose the context from the beginning of the prompt, so it will gradually stop doing the thing for which you set out the context. But what I like about this is that you can just continually reprompt with asking for the stuff that you're looking for. So right now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to just reprompt it to be a little bit more like a tutor. So I'm going to ask it in French to give me exercises, and I ask it to kind of guide the session in a way so that I don't have to be thinking about all the things that I want to discuss or talk about. I don't have to be creating those things on the fly. I can just ask ChatGPT to prompt me with, either conversation cues or whatever it is that I want to learn that day. So let's do an example where I start in Portuguese and then I go to English as a kind of asking ChatGPT to behave like a tutor. So now I'm going to switch here from French to Portuguese. And I'm going to speak it in Portuguese and ask it for a tutor session in English. So I can say something like, Oi, ChatGPT, meu nome é Lucas e eu estou aprendendo a falar inglês e eu gostaria que você se comportasse como um professor de inglês que gradualmente vai me dando uma aula simples de inglês com traduções em português e inglês e ao mesmo tempo vai me dando cues para falar e praticar a língua.
Com certeza, Lucas. Vamos começar a aula de inglês então.
So, as you guys can see, it will be talking to me. I can listen to the audio of the text all the way to the end, but just for the purpose of this demonstration, I can just click at stop and just look at the output and then give it a response, right? If I want to practice listening, I might just, listen until the end. But since now I'm just playing the role of like a beginner student in English, I can just, okay, I got it. Let me just practice. So now it gave me a few questions it gave me a few sentences in English. So hello, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, whatever. And now it's asking me, now that you know some of the basic phrases in English, how about practicing it? You can say something in English, or you can ask me my name in English. For example, let's practice together. So now from this Portuguese description of a task that I have to do in English, I can now reply in English. I can either say it using the audio to speech to text, or I can just write it. In this case, I'm going to write it. I'm going to say something like, hi, ChatGPT. I am fine. I am loving learning English with you. How are you? What is your name and your occupation? Maybe one of the weird things about it sometimes when I'm using speech to text is that since it's not multilingual, at least in this case it's not, the accent will be sometimes a bit off if the model is saying something in English, but the base model is Portuguese in this case. However, you get the gist. You can get these guided tutoring sessions just by prompting it in your original language and then asking for a tutoring session in the language that you want to learn, which I think is just mind-blowing. Because just think about this. You can just start learning any language you want just by prompting it and then interactively growing a conversation in a learning process, which is, for me, it's just insane. This is so cool. Okay, so let's do another example, all right? So in this one, we're going to do some translation. So now translation is going to be about, okay, so I'm learning, let's say Italian, and I want to translate something in Italian or from English to Italian, Italian to English. So let's see how a workflow in Italian will work. Ciao, ChatGPT, mi chiamo Lucas e volevo imparare italiano. Non parlo molto bene, ma volevo che mi insegni, non so come dire insegnare, teach in italiano, ma va bene. Volevo che mi insegna italiano e in inglese e italiano. So I don't speak very well Italian, but there we go. So as you can see, it will be, I was speeding up before, but now that I put it in normal speed, you can see it. It will prompt me with Italian and English. So it really helps to kind of like get the flow of the conversation going, which is super helpful and super useful. In this case, it kind of like prompted me with a few basic things that I can say in Italian. So I don't speak very well Italian. So let's do a flow where I actually practice a little bit of Italian so that you see how one could really use this to engage with like a new language. So it prompted me with this. So let's just copy it and ask it to translate in English. So I can say, translate this to English, please. And there we go. I hope these phrases are useful for you to start speaking Italian. If you want, we can also practice pronunciation together. Now let's try to have a little conversation. How are you today? Perfect. And now I can try to answer that in Italian. Ciao ChatGPT, grazie. Io sono bene oggi. Oggi volevo praticare un po' di italiano e volevo che mi volevo domandare questione. Come si dire question in Italian? So here I made a mistake, so now I'm going to go back and then I'm going to say come posso dire, and then I'm going to put it under quotes and I'm going to say come posso dire question, which I think is domanda, but I'm not 100% sure. Question in Italiano. And I try to keep the conversation in the language that I'm trying to learn because that's the challenge, right? Sono contento di sentire che sta bene oggi. Si traduce come domanda, quindi la tua frase sarebbe domani vorrei fare alcune domande in italiano.
Traduce come domanda. Quindi
Volevo
la tua
praticare.
frase sarebbe domani vorrei fare alcune domande in italiano.
So here it made a mistake just because I made a mistake in the actual speech to text. So you will encounter issues like having these kind of like mistranslations or miss speech to text. However, overall, now that it gave me the right way to pronunciate, I can just replace it. So vorrei fare alcune domande in italiano. Grazie, ChatGPT. Voglio fare le domande in italiano e voglio delle risposte in italiano, ma voglio voglio avere wait, so now when I'm making huge mistakes like this, I want to go back and I was like, voglio fare le domande in italiano e voglio le risposte in italiano. So this mistake is risposte in italiano, ma voglio che mi dare okay, so now I want to know how can I ask for an explanation in Italian. Come posso dire explain to me in Italian? In italiano. Explain to me in Italian. Spiegami in italiano. Perfetto. Perfetto, ChatGPT, grazie. Voglio che spiegami in italiano tutte le parole che io non conosco. E quando faccio un errore, voglio che mi correggia. I'm not 100% how to say correct in Italian, but I'm learning. That's the whole point. Certamente, sarò felice di spiegarti le parole che non conosci e correggere. Perfect. So now I'm kind of like creating the flow, right? So I can do something like, sarò felice di spiegarti, ma I want to know how to say, I want you to correct me. So I can ask it, puoi mi insegnare come dire, I want you to correct me in italiano? And this is one of the issues when we go back and forth between a language, which is sometimes we gotta be editing our prompts all the time. But I find this to be actually quite educational because when I'm doing this, I'm actually being forced to think in the languages that I understand. So, mi insegnare come dire, I want you to correct me in Italian. Yeah. So, insegnare come dire. And then I just put it in quotes. I say, correct me. And I send it. And I didn't even translate the uomini, as you can see. And now I got the response that I wanted, which is, I want you to correct me. In italiano si traduce come voglio correggermi. Voglio correggermi. Voglio che correggermi. I'm not sure about this one. In italiano e inglese se necessario. And I can just like literally ask a question and it will, let's see what's going to happen.
Certo, sarò felice di correggerti sia in italiano che in inglese se necessario.
Perfetto. Qualche esempio di frase che vorresti che ti vorrei. So you understood what I wanted, which is to correct, right? So it said, yes, all right, I'll be happy to correct you in Italian and in English if needed. Qualche esempio di frase che vorreste che ti corregga. And then it asked me for some examples of phrases that I want the model to correct me for. So as you can see, there's really like not a lot of limits to what you can do with this as far as language learning goes, because you can go back and forth between the languages that you're trying to learn. Let's do an example where we try to create challenges and exercises for some language that we're trying to learn. So let's do let's say I'm learning French and I want to practice some exercises in French. So I'll be doing, in English, I'll ask for the behavior of the French teacher, but I want to get a little bit more specific about how I want ChatGPT to correct my process. So I'm going to say something like, hi, ChatGPT. So I'm going to switch the speech to text now to French. So I'm going to say, hi, ChatGPT, let's practice French today. Act like a French teacher that will talk to me in French. And when I make language mistakes, you correct me in French or English. I don't want you to break the flow of the conversation. So insert the corrections in parentheses and let's try something like that. D'accord. J'ai appris un peu de français quand j'étais au Brésil, mais je ne suis jamais resté en France pendant plus que 2-3 semaines. Je ne parle pas très bien français, mais j'aime beaucoup d'apprendre des nouvelles langues. Donc, est-ce que tu peux me poser des questions intéressantes que je peux essayer de répondre en français? So now I'm prompting it to ask me questions and continue the conversation.
Est-ce que vous avez des activités que vous aimez faire pendant votre temps libre?
Ouais, j'ai beaucoup d'activités que j'aime faire dans mon temps libre. Mais en premier, comment est-ce qu'on dit dans mon temps libre? C'est ça la correcte forme pour cette situation? So I demanded a question about something that I didn't know in French.
C'est une bonne question. En français, sont corrects et utilisés couramment.
Perfect. So now I got the correction that I wanted in an explanation and a suggestion for another way of saying, which is pendant mes loisirs. So there's one thing that's important to note, which is obviously it's not going to be perfect and you have to keep an awareness for when it might make a mistake or not. However, you can just really grow from this conversation into, something else. Like you can go and fetch the explanation of the translation, or you can go check a source that you think might be, helpful or useful for that specific situation that you felt like the translation or the response from ChatGPT wasn't that great. But overall, it's just a pretty impressive way to interact with the model in order to learn a new language. So that's what I think it's just absolutely mind-blowing about ChatGPT and these kind of situations. Now I'm going to ask for some exercises in French. D'accord, ChatGPT, je voudrais que vous me donniez des exercices pour pratiquer français. Je voudrais des exercices intermédiaires. Je voudrais 10 questions et je voudrais des réponses aussi, mais au fin du texte, parce que je veux essayer de répondre à des questions avant de voir si j'étais correct ou pas. So I demanded some questions, and I demanded for a few questions, and I demanded the answers at the end. Now, this is really interesting. So now it gave me the 10 questions, and I asked it for the answers at the end so that I wouldn't check them when I'm trying to answer the questions. So what it did is it did not show me the answers, and it will wait for me to respond so then I can give my answers and then it will correct. So now I can just say something like, et I'll give the answers in French. Okay, so based on the questions, I can now start giving my answer. So I can say pizza, mon endroit préféré dans ma ville natale, c'était mon jardin, et etc. So I can continue to just give the answers. I can say mon film préféré est, je sais pas, Good Will Hunting, and etc. So now let's just give these 3 answers and then ask for the responses so that we can get the feedback from ChatGPT. Donnez des réponses, s'il vous plaît. So now, as we can see a few examples of the corrections. So then it said, ma plat préféré est la pizza. Mon endroit préféré était mon jardin. Mon film préféré est Good Will Hunting. So as you can see, you can get really interactive feedback, and you can get creation of exercises, and you can get creation of challenges, for example. So we can do an example where from Portuguese, I ask it for challenges to learn English. ChatGPT, eu quero que você me dê desafios para praticar o inglês. Me dê 3 desafios com uma dica de como começar. So here I ask for some challenges in Portuguese and some tips on how to get started. And I will also reprompt it so that it starts behaving like a Portuguese to English teacher. Perfect. Now I'm getting the responses. So I'll just stop with the speech to text so that we can just take a look at the actual answers that we got. So it gave me a vocabulary challenge, it gave me a grammar challenge, and it gave me a conversation challenge. So find a partner in conversation and talk to it for 30 minutes. And then the grammar challenge was something like pick a verbal time in English that you want to make it better. Sure. I mean, I like the third one, but I don't really like the answers that it gave me, so I'm going to reprompt it so that it will give me better answers. Você poderia me dar outros 3 desafios pouco menos complexos e mais rápidos de realizar? Perfect.
Encontre artigo de notícias em inglês sobre tópico que lhe
Now,
interessa.
one of the things I noticed in this example is that it's responding to me in Portuguese, which makes sense because I asked it in Portuguese. But I would like it to talk to me in English because in this scenario, I am a Portuguese-speaking person learning how to speak English. So let's prompt it to give me the answers in English. ChatGPT, eu quero que você me dê os desafios em inglês e se eu pedir, você me dá a tradução em português. All right, perfect. So now I can continue in Portuguese. So let's go back and then we can say, okay, so let's take a look at the challenges that it gave me. It gave me choose a scene from a movie, make a list of words in English, pick an article from the news, etc. So I could then go on and try to respond to the challenges, try to actually answer these challenges. But you get the point. The point is just that you can continually get whatever you want in whatever format that you may choose. And ChatGPT will just constantly just be allowing you to like evolve on top of the stuff that you're interested in learning. Okay, so now let's ask it for a translation challenge in Italian, for example, just so that we can see the level of exercises, challenges, feedback, interactivity that we can get. Hi, ChatGPT, can you give me a challenge translation in Italian? So give me a paragraph written in Italian. I'll try to give you a translation and then you will correct my translation. I want to do one example from Italian to English and one from English to Italian. So sometimes I have to switch the languages back and forth for the speech to text and it can be a bit weird, but it works perfect. Okay, so this is the translation that it gave me. Sono appena tornato di una vacanza in montagna con la mia famiglia. Abbiamo trascorso una settimana in una piccola città di montagna. Abbiamo fatto molte escursioni. Il paesaggio era bellissimo e il tempo era molto piacevole. Siamo anche andati a visitare un vecchio castello e abbiamo fatto un giro in barca sul lago. È stata una vacanza molto rilassante e divertente. Perfect. So now I can attempt to give an answer and I can check the actual response right here on the bottom. I can do that from, English to Italian and, French to Portuguese. Those are the languages that I kind of like have an awareness of and speak somewhat. But you can have it apply to whatever language you're trying to learn. I'm not actually sure all the languages that ChatGPT accepts, but you can test that out for yourself. All right, guys, that's it. I kind of like try my best to give you an example of a workflow for how to learn a new language using ChatGPT. Hopefully I showed you like enough examples and enough like demos of different scenarios and situations so that you can apply that to yourself for whatever language you're trying to learn. And I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, please don't forget to like and subscribe and see you next time. Cheers.